Okay, this is part 2, and I'm starting with question number 16. So what is a gamete? It's a gamete in males. Every cell that that undergoes meiosis produces 4 gametes. Those gametes are the sperm cells. So essentially, what we are calling sex cells, remember those are the same thing as sperm or eggs. And then females, their gamete would be the egg. Next question. What happens if a human ends up with too many chromosomes? So you might be thinking, okay, in mitosis, if a parent had 46 chromosomes, the 2 identical daughters had 46 chromosomes. In meiosis, if the parent has 46 chromosomes, the 4 daughter cells have 23 apiece, so they have half of what the parent has. So the reason why meiosis divides twice is to make sure that each daughter cell has half of what the parent has. But the reason why that's important, the reason why you don't want a human to end up with too many chromosomes, is if you look here, most humans or most organisms who have too many chromosomes don't survive. So there are some plants actually that produce bisexual reproduction, not asexual, and we'll talk about how in just a second. But most of the time, any organism that has too many chromosomes does not survive. So if you look here, this is a list of a human's chromosomes. You're supposed to have 23 pairs, and basically what happens is you get one from your mom, one from your dad, one from your mom, one from your dad, one from your mom, one from your dad, and so on. And then this very last one, you can kind of see if you look real close at the numbers, this is 21 pairs, 22 pairs, this would be the 23rd pair. The last pair of chromosomes, the reason why it's labeled X is because that determines whether you're a female or a male. And so this last set is a little different from the other ones. Now, if you look here, this person on chromosome 13, they got 3 of them. So they either got 2 from their mom and 1 from their dad, or vice versa. So the reason that's a problem is, again, most of the time, if you get too many, you don't survive. So go ahead and answer number 17. But I wanted to show you, if you've ever seen someone or heard about Down syndrome, this is a little baby with Down syndrome. And the way that Down syndrome happens, or the way that someone gets Down syndrome, is because they have too many chromosomes. So you're supposed to have a total of 46. Anybody with 47 ends up with Down syndrome. So Down syndrome, most of the time they have learning disabilities. They also don't have a long life expectancy. I've seen and known people with Down syndrome that live, maybe in their 30s and 40s, but most of the time it's not expected for them to live that long. So they don't, most humans we can expect to live maybe 80, 90. Some people live in their hundreds, but it's not expected for Down syndrome or people with Down syndrome to live that long. So essentially Down syndrome, again, is whenever you end up with too many chromosomes. So go ahead and answer number 18. And then finally, the last one, it says, think and apply knowledge. I'm going to read this question to you. It says, plants grown from leaf cuttings and fragmentation have the same traits as the parent plant. Plants grown from seeds can vary from the parent plants in many ways. Why can this happen? So a few minutes ago, I mentioned to you that some plants reproduce by asexual reproduction, and some plants reproduce by sexual reproduction. So if a plant is growing from leaf cuttings and fragmentation, remember that means that we're literally cutting the plant up and replanting it, and it'll start growing into a new plant. Okay? That's a form of asexual reproduction. However, if you plant a plant from a seed, that would be a form of sexual reproduction. So the reason, we're going to learn more about how flowers reproduce later. That's actually our next thing that we're going to be studying. But essentially in plants, the pollen is kind of like the sperm in males. So with humans, we think of sperm. With flowers, we think of pollen. That's their male sex cell. And then with plants, their female sex cell is this ovary. So if you cut in a plant, you would see this piece here if it reproduces sexually. And so this is a female part. So basically when a bee takes the male part, like pollen, and they put it on a new flower, that pollen's going to travel down and end up in the ovary, and that's how a seed is formed. So we know with sexual reproduction in humans, we have a sperm and egg. When they meet, a baby is formed. With plants, it's a pollen meets an ovary, and a seed is formed. So plants produced by asexual reproduction are the result of mitosis, whereas plants grown from seeds, they are different from their parents because they are sexual reproduction. So if we go back to our question said, how come if plants are grown from asexual reproduction, they're exactly like their parent, whereas if plants are grown from seeds, they're different from their parent? And again, that's because asexual reproduction makes identical daughter cells, whereas sexual reproduction has different daughter cells because they're getting chromosomes from the male and the female, and they're combining them. So go ahead and explain number 19 on your paper, and that is it for this video.